Smartphones. I forgot to bring my smartphone. Hold your smartphone in the air. Christian, what was that, man? There was nothing there. Good. I want you to take that phone and I want you to look up what your name means. All right? And so you'll go on Google, as my son would say, ask Google. All right? Thank you guys so much for moving. That was pretty great. We just need a few more over here. We need a few more. Maybe you guys move in or you guys move back. It might be easier for you guys to move back. But start Googling your name. Start talking about, my name is, for example, my name's Ian. It's a Gaelic interpretation of John. John means the beloved gift, or the provider God will be gracious to you. All right? So start looking that up. Start talking to each other. This green marker's got a flat tire. Make noise, it's okay. I'm going to have my back turned. Just don't throw anything at me. It's not very much noise. Ooh. Do we have a bigger marker? The green one has a flat tire, I'm sorry. It does? Okay. Maybe we'll just abandon this idea altogether. All right, good. That should have been plenty of time. Google works at the speed of light. Somebody tell me what their name is. Manifestate. Well, what's your name, though? This is my lovely wife, Tiffany. She's really beautiful. You should talk to her. She's smart and she's funny. Yeah, she's great. You're a spirit. Spirit. Well, what's your name, though? Gary. So Gary means spirit. Okay. So what do we know about the name Spirit?
Spirit. No, it's spirit, bro.
Oh, a spear. I can't spell. I could spell spirit, but spear, I don't know if that's E-E or E-A. E-A. All right, good. So we have a spear in the audience. What else do we have? Come on, this isn't going to work, guys.
My name is Julie.
Hi, Julie.
And I am youthful.
You are youthful. Okay. All right, what else do we have? Just yell.
Nicole, victorious people.
I'm just going to, victorious people. All right, so we have youthful, spear-throwing, victorious people. All right, how does that work for you?
My name's Amanda, and my name means ready to be loved.
Ooh. All right, how do we put that into the sentence? Oh, good. Worthy to be loved. We'll make that an acronym. So we have youthful, victorious, spear-throwing people that are worthy to be loved. Good. Maybe you in the gray shirt with the glasses and the mustache. What's your name? Greg. Ray. What is it? Do you know what it means? Strong. Ooh, perfect. Perfect. So we have youthful, strong, spear-throwing, victorious people that are worthy to be loved. That sounds pretty great, right? In the back. Sword or we have more weapons. This is good. We're going to need them. All right. All right. So we have swords and torches for our youthful, victorious, worthy to be loved people. Anybody else? This is pretty good. In the very back. Tina. What is it? River. I can't make that fit. Yep, can't make that fit. Gift of God. Okay, so we can have a river and a gift of God. Good. We're going to get too far, and I'm just going to sound like a dummy. So we're going to stop there. So this morning we're going to talk about names, and I'm just going to abandon my notes because my uncle told me to talk for about 20 minutes, and I have like 8 pages. So that doesn't fit in 20 minutes. But we'll keep this up. I got a new marker. I need somebody or everybody to open up their Bibles to page 1, Genesis chapter 1. When you're there, let me know. Can you see this? Is this even worth doing? Kind of here. What if we... Letters, please, Vanna. No? Nobody remembers that show? All right. Can we see it now? Woo! Got some boxes, some T's, and this XN looking thing. All right, Genesis chapter 1, who's there? Verse 5, please, in the blue. Did that get on page 2? Okay. So God did what? Okay, in Hebrew, this word is kara. It's the very first introduction we get to something having a name and something being told what it is. It's the first sort of introduction that we get when we're in the Old Testament, and it's kara. Everybody say kara. Kara. Quick little bit of background. I'm not a Hebrew scholar, nor am I a biblical scholar, nor do I have any sort of degree that should allow me to be teaching this. But I've done my very best to make sure I'm not lying to any of you when we talk about these things. So what I'm trying to say is, you in the blue basketball shirt, you can do this too. You just find something that interests you and sort of run with it. So first introduction to anything being talked about or listed or named, for lack of a better word. We have God called what? Good. So when we talk about call in English, if I said, hey, I called my Aunt Nikki, what does that mean? I picked up the phone and I said, hey, Aunt Nikki. Am I naming Aunt Nikki, or am I already using her name? I'm already using it. Good. So you're going to see in your Bible over and over again in the Old Testament this word kara, which means called. And it's not the same as we call things today in English, where I called him dumb, or I called him a mess, or I called him watches too much TV. This is a beckoning, it's a calling out, it's a yelling out to. God yells out and calls something. He's calling to it, hearkening it, bringing it forward. Let's move on to Genesis 2. We're going to get another word. And we're in Genesis chapter 2. Somebody give me... Let's just start about halfway through. We're going to be in the section where God is naming the animals. So 2, let's say somewhere around 15. Are we there? Are we at the point where God's naming the animals? Or Adam's naming the animals? Just start reading. Somebody just start reading. We'll get there. We're pretty close.
Then the Lord God said, it is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helper fit for him. Now out of the ground the word of God from every beast of the field and every bird of the heavens, and brought them to the man to see what he would call them.
Okay, stop there for 1 second. What did it say? God wanted to see what he would what? Call them. Good, keep reading.
And whatever the man called every living creature, that was his name.
Okay, and we're going to stop there. So we have a new thing. We have a name. Does anybody read Harry Potter or have read Harry Potter? Thank you. Really, there's like 4 people here that read Harry Potter. This was like life-changing for American people. All right, how big is Harry Potter? Like if we were going to give it like inches from like left to right if we put all the books together, how big is it? Not too big? 7. This guy reads a lot more than I do. We're pretty big. All right, I had my friends measure it because I don't actually own the books, but it's like 10 and a half, 11 inches long from beginning to end. Everybody grab your Bible. How big's your Bible from beginning to end? Like 2.5 inches. So we have this book written by a book about a fictitious person that spans his 20 years, ish, give or take, and that's 10.5 inches long. I am not good with dimensions. Let's say this is 10.5 inches, or maybe take like 5-year Bibles and put them together. It's that long. And what we have here is a history of over 4,000 to 6,000 years, depending on who you talk to, of human history, and it's in a book that's 2.5 inches long. Does anybody else think we missed something? Maybe other things happened in all of those years that just didn't quite get written down. Are you tracking with what I'm saying, or am I just talking weirdo talk? Thank you. All right, so one of the points in my life where I had to start reading the Bible differently was when I learned about this word right here, name. Because I assumed, like I think a lot of us do, that when I read called and when I read named, I was looking at it from an English point of view, where this is some sort of amount of sounds that get put together to label something. So I am Ian, I am Ian, like this bit of sound. But really what we have, and this is very, very important, so if you have a pencil, write this part down, is we have a word called shame. S-H-A-M-E, kind of like name, but put an S-H at the beginning. And this is a noun, and it means name. And so for the Hebrew people, the name is the essence of who something is. So, where I thought they were just saying his name was Bob, they were actually saying his life story is boom. So, to illustrate that point, we have, it's two letters, that mean name. It's shame. Everybody say shame real quick. And God brought the animals so that Adam could do what? Name them. Did anybody else ever just read this story as if God's like, poof, and Adam's like, giraffe. And God was like, good job. And throws this at him, is like, dog. Yeah, that's a dog. Did anybody ever read this story like that? He's like, duck, fish, cow. Right? Why in the heck would that story be in the Bible? The greatest story of human existence, and they decided to write down that Adam named the animals. Doesn't that sound boring? Oh, come on, you can say yes or no. I don't have a good answer to this.
Yes.
Yes, that sounds boring. Why does that sound boring?
Because it's the same thing over.
Yeah, it's just naming animals. But what do we now know about naming? What is naming? Naming is actually saying the essence of what something is. It's the very character, it's the very substance, it's the here's everything you need to know about this thing's life and what's to come in one word. So we're not just creating a bunch of sounds, he's creating an essence. And the storyteller here, depending on who you believe wrote this story, tries to give you some hints in the beginning. So if we start back at 18, I think it was, it says what?
Then the Lord God said, it is not good that the man should be alone.
Okay, stop. That also sounds weird, right? If we're just talking about an amalgamation of sounds, why does it matter that it's not good for man to be alone? I'll give him a cat. Yeah, that sounds like a right idea. Or I'll give him a lizard. That should be perfect, right? No, it's saying the very essence of Adam, which by the way means dirt. Congratulations, men. Your husbands, your wives were generally right when they got angry with you. You are dirt. It was saying the very essence of this dirt man, this thing that I created in my image, it's not good for him to be alone. His essence lacks something. What does it lack? Well, I will create more, and I will let him say what the essence of all these things is. So, we have tigers. Let's talk about tigers. What's the essence of a tiger, Caden? Or Christian, excuse me. What does a tiger do? It growls. What else does it do? It hunts. What else does it do? It catches, it sneaks, it eats, it kills, it destroys. It's an apex predator. Does that fill the essence that Adam, this dirt man, needs? Would that be the proper thing to sustain him, to keep him alive? No. And time after time, I imagine this probably took a couple of days. There's a lot of animals, and I imagine he probably got tired, and he had to sit and think, because it wasn't just dog, bird, cat, fish. It was like, well, what does this thing do? How does it act? What's it going to do in reference to me? How does it fit in the garden? What is its name? What is its essence? What's its core? And what happens? Are any of them good? Go into like 19, 20. What happens in those verses? What? They're good, but not good enough. Right. There's nothing that's substantial. There's nothing that... All right, guys, bear down with me. There's nothing that completes the dirt. It's missing. So what happens? We're not going to read this part. We're going to fast track. What happens next? He makes Eve. Does he make Eve? I'm going to get technical for a moment. No, he doesn't make Eve. We're going to run out of space here. So he causes Adam to fall asleep, right? All right, Adam falls asleep. Everybody nod. Yes, please tell me you know this story. Okay, so Adam falls asleep. He yanks a rib out of his side, and how he sleeps through that, I don't know. But he wakes up, and he goes, whoa, man! Right? Right? You've heard that joke before. He doesn't create Eve. Eve wasn't created. Adam calls is the word, which is important. The first thing, the first action that we see the dirt man giving, the thing that's supposed to complete him, is he calls her, and he calls her woman. So what happens next? Woo! What happens next? Fast track the story. She's like, hey, the apples look good, right? The farmer's produce down the road, we like that. She talks to the snake, they have a good time, they eat the fruit. Things go south, they realize they're naked, things get worse, and God's like, you gotta go. It's time to get out of the garden, you're on your own. There's an interesting thing that happens there. It's chapter 3, verse 20. Who has chapter 3, verse 20? All right, who's cheating back there? All right, so what's the word? Adam does what? He names his wife. All right, what does he actually do? Without using the word name, what does he do? Yeah, he gives the essence. Who actually is this woman? Because remember, woman is just a thing the same as a cat, a ball, a lizard, a thing. He's just calling out, woman! And now he gives her a name, and he says, your name is Eve. Does anybody know what Eve means? I am not doing good with this. Mother of all the living, that's what the story says. He called her Eve because she was the mother of all living, which is close, and it gives the connotation to what Eve means, but Eve actually means something a little different. Guesses? Whoever's cheating in the back?
It's about to happen.
Something that's about to happen. What is it? Living. Living. Eve means, and I'm out of space already, breath. Or quite honestly, the breath of all the living. So what completes the dirt? It's the very beginning of the story. God breathed into the dirt, and he created something living. A name. This entire Shem of where we come from, the entire human race, is built on the backs of these two people, one called dirt and one called the breath of life. And they get together and they have kids. What are their kids' names? Cain and Abel. That's a tragic story, right? It's kind of like Romeo and Juliet in the Christian world. What happened with Cain and Abel? Cain kills Abel. Why did Cain kill Abel? He was jealous. Cain, his name means possession. And Abel, his name means life or breathing. The dirt is completed by the breath of life, and they create two things. Human life creates two things. It creates possession, and it creates more life. The question in the story becomes, do you let your possessions destroy your life? It's all about the name. It's about the essence of what this person is. And so the question becomes, is this a history book, or is this a story about something so much bigger? And I think we have something a little bit bigger going on now that we understand what a name actually is, the raw essence of what gets created from different things. All right, we're on page 2. We're going to go WWF style. Can somebody bring up Genesis 32? Somebody yell when you have it. Okay. What's going on in Genesis 32? There's a man, right? There's a man named Jacob. Good. Somebody tell me the story of Jacob. What happened in the past 6 chapters? Quick synopsis of his life. He stole his brother's birthright, so he's a little bit of a jerk. All right, or maybe a big bit. Who knows? Somebody tell me some more. What's going on? What's he trying to do at this point in the story? What? He's trying to get married, so he has to do something. So Jesus tells this story in the New Testament. He's like, if you've got a problem with your brother or your sister and you have a gift at the altar and you realize that, you kind of got to stop going to the altar and you got to go make things right. So Jacob's trying to make things right. Okay? So if we go to verse 24, somebody read verse 24 and go the whole way through 28. Good. All right, so Jacob, his name means supplanter. Anybody know what supplanter means?
Take place.
To take the place of. Okay, in what connotation? Because that's correct.
You push someone else aside and say, all right, get out of here, I'm taking over your job, basically.
Good. Everybody hear that? Okay, so supplanter means you're taking the place of something, and it's a negative connotation, as in I'm forcing myself to do that. Like, so if I wanted to supplant your seat, I would kind of do this. So, I have now supplanted. You can call me Jacob.
Okay, Jacob.
All right. So, it also carries the idea of assailing. So you can kind of see the name Jacob kind of fits his life story, right? This is the story of the man that we're talking about. He steals from his brother, takes all the stuff. He gets what he needs by supplanting it. All right, and so a weird thing happens as he's on his way. He wrestles with an angel or a messenger from God, or some scholars will even say he wrestled with God himself. Did he win? Did he win? No. No, did the angel win? Yeah? Yeah, I mean, it seemed to be a tie, right? And so they're fighting, and they're grappling, and they're wrestling, and, kind of picture like WWF, old school. And the angel's like, let me go. Jacob's like, let me go. And he's like, no way, not until you bless me, even though I already broke your leg. So he asks for a blessing. What's a blessing? Good things. All right. Another idea. All right. If you're under the age of 10, raise your hand. I think I've got nobody. All right. So in Christmas time, we generally want a lot of blessings, right? We want presents, right? What sort of things do you ask for? You guys. What did you ask for Christmas last year? Oh, yes, you do. I can still remember things I asked for when I was your age. Nerf guns, cool. Toys, right? Things that are going to make you happy. Did anybody ever in their entire history ask for a gift of a new name? Why does that make any sense? This story's kind of weird. This dude just wrestled with some sort of being that nobody else sees but him. Got his leg broke. Imagine what that would look like as like the outsider. There's a dude doing martial arts. His leg breaks in half. He falls to the ground and says, no, I need a name. You're locking that dude up, right? Please say yes. Yeah, okay. Good. And so the angel blesses him and he calls him what? Israel. So we know that the name is the essence of the thing. So what is the essence of Israel? What does it mean? Struggle. Good. Give me another idea. Who with? God, yeah. It comes from Sarah, which is Sarah, which is to wrestle, to struggle, to fight. And El, they tack an L on the end, and in English we make it Israel. So struggles, fights, wrestles with God. Guys, we're the church, right? This is our roots. This is our history. This is where sort of our communal story gets named, right? And we're called those that struggle with God. We're called out. This is our first name. Now, in the Old Testament, there's a sort of a rule, if you will, and this is an idea I don't have completely fleshed out yet, but I was talking with a friend about it because I was noticing there's sort of this rule of the second, and maybe somebody can back me up on this. In the Old Testament, things generally happen in pairs of two, and it's usually the second. I think I was going to write snack. Second, it's generally the second that God prefers or God is using to make a point. As in Cain kills Abel. Abel came second. He was the preferred gift from God. Israel is the second name of Jacob. It's the preferred name or the preferred understanding of the essence of who these people are. So in the Old Testament, we get our first name as a people group, and we're called those that struggle and wrestle and fight with God. I can live with that, right? It's a pretty good essence. It's kind of what we're doing this morning. You're listening to me talk about what I've struggled through this morning. How are we doing on time? Is anybody looking at time? Okay, we're doing good. All right. So let's move out of this. Let's jump into the New Testament, and let's go to Matthew 16. We're going to read verses 13 to 20. And somebody just start reading when they find it, but please read loudly so that the people that are either behind you or in front of you can hear it. Verse 13 to 20, I believe.
Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi. He asked his disciples,
Okay, stop for 1 second. What do we know about names? I can't say this enough, guys. What is a name? What is a name in the Old Testament? It's the essence of what it is. So if the writer in this very short story takes the time to write down the name of something, is it important? Yes. Okay. Good. So we're in Caesarea Philippi. Keep going.
"Who do people say the Son of Man is?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets."
Keep going, yeah.
"But what about you?" He asked. "Who do you say I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Jesus replied, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this is not revealed to you by man, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth
Picture.
will be loosed in heaven." Then he warned his disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Christ.
Good. Can I get the picture I sent you all then? All right. So first name we have to deal with in this very short story that kind of changed the entire earth. You following me? That gets summed up in like 20 sentences. Caesarea Philippi. This is a picture of it today. It's two names. Which one came first? Which one came second? And it's an area in Pania, or Pania, however you want to say it, where they worshipped the god Pan. It was the area for fertility, and because there's kids here, you're going to have to put two and two together. But if you wanted to worship a god of fertility and you wanted to act out what this god did for you, you would do certain acts. So there was a lot of this certain act happening at this place. Sort of near the bottom there, there's a cave in the middle of the picture, if you will. And there was a spring that came up out of this cave every spring, and it receded every fall, early winter. And since fertility is represented by a river or water wherever you're at, that's pretty cool now that we're putting this together. It's springtime because that's when things get fertile and the god goes away at wintertime. This is where it's coming in and out of, so this must be the gate in and out of where he lives. Our gods live down in the dirt, which we in the Christian world call Hades or hell or the afterlife. So this area quite literally was in common tongue the gates of hell. So Jesus brings these teenagers to the very literal gates of hell, which have a new name because the Romans have taken over, and they call it Caesarea Philippi. Philippi was the son of King Herod. Does anybody know anything about King Herod and what his name was? Terrible dude. Terrible dude. His name, given to him by Caesar, was King of the Jews. Ooh, we know what that means. There's lots of stories about the King of the Jews in the Bible, right? And Philip, knowing that Caesar would probably kill him if he kept the name just for himself, put Caesar at the beginning because nobody that fears for their own life doesn't give graciousness to God incarnate on earth, which would be Caesar's title or Caesar's name. So literally what we have here are the two titles that the writers of the New Testament use over and over again. King of the Jews and the Son of God incarnate on earth. Couple that with the idea of Pania and all the acts that were going on, humans and goats, all of those things. Right at the gates of hell, Jesus walks these teenagers, these 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old kids, while all of this is going on, and he asks them a very simple question. What was the first question? Who do they say I am? Who do they say? What's my name? He's not talking about people in general. He's asking about these people very specifically. Who do they say that I am? What's my name to these people? What's the raw essence of who I am and what I do and why I came? And so they start throwing things out, right? As you do. You want to impress the person that you're following. And so they start throwing out names like John the Baptist and a prophet and Elijah and things that don't quite get to the point. But Jesus, following the same rule of two that our good God in heaven always does, gives them a second question. And because we know the rule of two, we know that the second question has to be more important than the first question. He says, okay, well, who do you say I am? What's my name to you? What's the raw essence of who I am, who I came to be, what I came to do? Who do you say I am? What's my name to you? And so fittingly, Simon answers him. And what does Simon say? So you're the Christ. Okay, so you're the anointed one. The chosen by God, the one who's going to save us. It brings in all these different connotations. And what does Jesus do? He blessed him. He gave him a new name, right? He gave him a second name. He said, no longer are you going to be called Simon. Simon, by the way, means the one who hears. So Simon definitely heard something. He had a calling. He had something going on. And he says, I'm going to call you Peter. You're going to be the rock that we build the rest of this on, that we build the church on. Church happens to be the word ecclesia. I think it's with K's. Does that look about right? Doesn't much matter. Ecclesia is a group of people in Jesus' day that were called specifically out of their homes into a public assembly to give testimony or to testify to certain things. It's a group of people that came together, not to another building. So they didn't leave their house and come to a church building. They left their house and came to a public assembly, an open air where everybody could hear and everybody would know what they had to say or what they had to testify to. And Jesus says, that's you. Because of what you just did, you heard, you came, you talked, and I'm going to build everything that my anointed person has come to do on your back. Make sense? 20 sentences to tell that entire story. All right, we're going to go two more places real quick. We're going to move forward to Acts So somebody go into Acts for me and get to chapter 4, because we still haven't got our second name yet. Remember, this is a calling. So we're still waiting for the second name. When we get to Acts chapter 11, or chapter 4, excuse me, let me know. Did I say 4 or 11? 4. Specifically verse 26 to save some time. That was Acts chapter 4. All right, I wrote down something wrong. Let me figure it out here. What? That's how it goes. All right, so there's a story in Acts. Somebody with a smartphone, find the story where they were first called Christians at Caesarea Philippi. Chapter 2. 2:26? All right, somewhere in Acts, you can look it up later. It says they were first called Christians, right? There's a very important thing we all need to know about names in the Bible. In any of our stories so far, has the person named themselves? No. Okay, so you have to be named by somebody else. All right, disciples. The disciples who happen to call themselves the followers, why am I writing this out? Followers of the way, which is kind of the equivalent of, like Solid Rock Church or things like that we have today, where it's more like, what's our catchy name going to be? We're going to be the followers of the way. This is what the disciples were calling themselves. And so Roman guards, different people decided to make fun of them, and they called them Christians. It was a derogatory term. It was kind of common for the Romans to say, you are this, you are that. It kind of scapegoated people into a different place and a different class in life because you weren't a Roman. So you're a Christian. You're a follower of the anointed. Is this name number 1 or name number 2? Name number 2. Name number 1 was those who wrestle with God, right? Our people group was first given the name Israel, where we wrestled with God. The second name that we're given by somebody else in the Bible is Christian. Is the first name or the second name more important? Second name. Second name's always more important. So, why is it more important? I'll give you some of my speculation because I don't have a great answer for this. But when you're wrestling with somebody else, who are you wrestling for? I know I'm personally wrestling so I don't get my butt kicked. So I'm kind of wrestling for me. I'm wrestling God for my own benefit, and what am I going to get out of that, and who am I going to become in that situation? And when you remember reading in the first story, the blessing he gets is for him, right? So when we're wrestling, our first name was this group of people that wrestled with God. Who is he? What does he want? What does he want to do? And what happens over and over again in the New Testament? They push into God. God pushes back. They fall down. They say, why this? Why that? Who is this? Oh no, we're getting exiled. We're getting moved. They're constantly wrestling with God, trying to figure out where he is in all of this situation, all the while missing what's coming to them. Because while you wrestle, it's just about you. What am I going to get out of this? How am I not going to die? How am I going to live further? What's going to be my namesake? And consequently, Jesus is giving his first sermon, and he stands up and he says, I've come here to give sight to the blind, and you have heard this today, that the people are going to be fed, and the naked are going to be clothed. And that's fulfilled today, and they want to kill him, which is kind of an interesting story. Like, yeah, this dude wants to do some good. Like, let him go do it. It's because later on in Isaiah it says, because I am the King of all things, I am Christ's anointed, I am what's coming. These people who have been wrestling with God for their own sake were more worried about keeping their tithes and their symptoms and their way of understanding life boxed into one simple way where they win. Because your first name is always about you. I'm going to win. What's in it for me? I'm going to make sure that I get to be prolonged. If you're a follower, somebody told me I missed a W and an E. If you're a follower of something, who's winning? Whoever you're following, right? So what's the second name about? Is the name about you, or is the name about the person that you're following? Right. The second name that's more important is no longer about wrestling for your own life. It's about following where this person's going and doing what this person's doing. Not really for your own sake based on what we've seen with Jesus, but for the sake of the people where you end up and where you're going. So those are our two names. In church today, we all are where? Where are we? Not figuratively, actually quite literally, where are you? What? You're in a church building. Where's the church building at? Elizabethtown. Does anybody know what Elizabethtown means? Or where the name came from or anything like that? All right, there's a sergeant back in 1753 who got the land for some reason or another. That part's not quite clear. Had a lovely, beautiful wife, kind of like I do, and said, I think I'll name it Elizabethtown. We'll name it after Elizabeth. And this will be her town. Now, the Pennsylvania Dutch people that were here, who I imagine were kind of confused to the whole idea as to why does this guy get my land where I've been here for a while. But that's an American thing to do, and we can talk about that another day. And they said, well, we'll call it Elizabeth's neighborhood, right? And they say it in their Pennsylvania Dutch way, which is like this long, and I really can't say it, so I'm sorry. But it means Elizabeth's neighborhood. So the name Elizabeth, does anybody know what that means? Is anybody here named Elizabeth? No? All right, Elizabeth means oath of God, or the keeping of the oath of God. So we have a town that's named after a lady named Elizabeth, or a neighborhood that's named after a lady named Elizabeth, which means keeping the oath of God. So what's God's oath? All right, Hebrews chapter 3 through chapter 7 talks about God keeping his oath to us. He makes this final oath, and he makes it on the back of Jesus because Jesus is an eternal priest. And the oath, in the way that I'll put it out here real quick, to me means that Jesus is the high priest. He's the one that gets to make the final decision. That's the oath, because he is eternal and because he is God. He's kind of the dude that's in charge and gets to decide yay, nay, what's good for people, what's bad for people, the in, the out, the what is right, the what is wrong, the way that the world actually is. The oath is that what Jesus said and what Jesus proclaimed and what his name was actually what was true and what will always be true and what will never change. So you guys are actually seated in a pretty interesting space, this Elizabethtown, this oath. And if you couple it with the idea of a neighborhood, which Jesus spends a lot of time talking about in the New Testament, the word neighbor, according to Strong's, has a really great definition. It's anybody other than you, because that's what Jesus said it was. So, church, you're in Elizabethtown. You're in the oath of God's neighborhood. What's your name? And I'm talking figuratively now. Every one of you has an individual name that was given to you by your family, your first name. As a people group, we have a name. Followers of this oath and this idea right here in our neighborhood for everybody around us. And it's really important that we don't start naming the people around us, because what happens when we name the people around us? We suck at it. We start to say, you stink, you're a terrorist, you're bad, I'm right, so you must be wrong. And we start to name things outside of what Jesus talked about. So, what's your name? Think about it for a minute. Don't think about it for yourself. Start to think about the people sitting next to you. Start to think about the people on the street. Start Start to think, what do they see me do every day? Who do they see me following? What's the very essence of what I do every day? What is that? We are. What do they see? This is a reflective thing. I don't really want answers here. I want you to kind of think about this on your own. Because as a church, we know what we're supposed to be doing. As individuals, how do we fit into that? How do we fall into this line? Who do they say you are? What's your name? Where are you going? And why? Let's pray for a moment. God, you're good.